Hey everyone, it's Noah from Rarity 7. Owen and I are back to talk about 40 more new coins that we have just added to the Rarity 7 website. We're super psyched to get into each coin, show and tell, talk a little bit about the history of each coin, and it's going to be a really good time, so stick around and we're going to dive into some excellent numiz nerding. Okay, the first coin we have tonight is an 1803 half cent PCGS XF45, a draped bus half cent. I bought this coin, and actually a lot of the coins we're going to be looking at tonight at the Rosemont show in Rosemont, just outside of Chicago last week. It was a really fun, big show. I did a bunch of trade deals and bought a bunch of coins from dealers and collectors, and this is one of them. So this is the first coin we're going to look at tonight. Owen, what do you think of this guy?
Yeah, I really like this 1803. Most dates of draped bust half cents can be found pretty easily in nice, attractive condition, but 1803 is actually a very low mintage. They made less than 100,000 of these. So you don't have that giant pool of coins to choose from. It's a pretty scarce coin to begin with. And then as with most early copper, so a lot of them were just really well circulated or ugly or have environmental problems or weren't made well. So this coin is kind of nice in every regard, especially for an 1803.
Yeah, when I was doing some pricing research on this, I look on eBay and like 99% of them are these corroded, pitted, disgusting examples and details holders. And this is, clearly one of the top ones in a straight grade XF with like a really nice look. So I was really happy with this acquisition, and I think it makes a really, really nice it'll make a really nice example in someone's either typeset or, early copper set. So it's a good one. Okay, well, let's move on to the second coin of the night, and that is an 1812 classic head large cent PCGS VF35. Now, this came in our last video. We talked about this wonderful early copper deal that you found, Owen, at the ANA show. This was actually part of that deal, and it was in a cracked holder, so I had to get it reholdered at the last show, which is why we're getting this one a little late. So this coin now has fresh PCGS plastic, no cracks, and is ready to go. So what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I really like this type, classic head large cents. I've said before in other videos that if you go on eBay and look up VF flowing hair large cent, you'll find more attractive examples of those than you will of classic head large cents, despite them not being nearly as popular and for the most part less valuable. So I think, or this type rather, represents like a nice opportunity that's like a challenging set to build, but it's not impossible, and it's not financially impossible either. So this is a really great example of a tough type.
Yeah, and as you've mentioned also, these are just a lot scarcer than a lot of people think they are. And this coin has, again, no, it's like a nice planchet. It doesn't have corrosion. So, once again, we're trying to get you examples of early copper that are really, really solid, for the type. So a lovely 1812 classic head large cent. We'll move on to the third coin that we've got. This is a 2-cent piece. This is an 1864 large motto 2-cent piece, MS65 red brown. I found this coin in a wholesaler's box. There's a couple big wholesalers who I always visit at all these major shows. They only sell to dealers, and they have boxes and boxes and boxes of coins. They have hundreds and hundreds of coins, and I have to sift through every single one of their double row boxes. And I'm not like some of these guys who walk away with stacks of 30, 40 coins. I end up finding maybe 4 or 5 coins in the hundreds and hundreds that they have for sale, because we're picky. So this is one of them. So what do you think of this coin that I picked out, Owen?
Yeah, I really like this one. This is a really solid example of the type. It's like predominantly red, gem uncirculated, CAC approved, excellent luster. This coin is probably priced a lot less than the viewers might imagine. This is like well under $1,000, even for a CAC approved gem example of it. So I think this is definitely an example of a lot of coin for the money, and this is like a perfect candidate for a gem type set.
Yeah, and I picked it, for all those reasons, and also it just generally is nice. I like reddish or red early copper, or, and Civil War era coins are really cool. So I'm glad you approve. Okay, here's another really, really fun one that I got. This I actually got as part of a trade deal when I was in Rosemont. This is an 1850 halftime PCGS AU58 with a CAC sticker. I did a lot of trade deals at that show, and this was one of the coins. And I saw this, I was like, yeah, I just kind of need to have it. What do you think of this guy?
Yeah, this one's like an example of a common coin, but this is kind of an uncommon condition. It'd be like easier to find one of these as like a CAC approved 64 than it is actually of this date. This is a CAC pop of just 3 coins. So this one kind of lives at this like happy in between. I think it's a really good balance of quality and affordability. This is a great type coin for not a ton of money.
Yeah, and I got it because, I think we're going to be selling it for something like $300, and it's just got a great look to it. I mean, this is like the silvery with a little bit of rub, and I figured, yeah, it's a tiny little coin. I mean, half dimes are tiny, but yeah, it's a tiny little CAC approved piece of seeded Liberty silver. I figured, you know what, that's a rarity 7 coin. I think I need to have this one. So was pretty happy grabbing this one. All right, well, let's move to another small piece of silver on the other end of the spectrum. Here is a key date, 1916D Mercury dime, NGC AG3 with CAC approval. I do love my key dates. We tend to stock a lot of the big key dates, 55 double dies, 16D Mercuries. This was an example of one of them. What do you think? How did I do on this one?
Yeah, this one looks great. I think this has an awful lot of central detail for an AG. So for AG, it does have that characteristic trait here on the reverse and partially on the obverse of blending there between the rim and the lettering. So it's kind of blending a little bit. That's kind of a characteristic of this grade. But I think this one swings way above its weight class in terms of central detail. I mean, like Liberty is pretty well defined for a 16D in AG. Again, CAC approved. So I think this is a really, nice wholesome example of a key date that kind of everybody wants or needs.
Why are so many Mercury dimes, 16D Mercury dimes in low grade like this? Well, I'd be curious to hear, with like a 55 double die, for example, those are all in AU. I mean, basically everyone is in AU. The lowest grade one I have ever seen is in XF. And I feel like every 16D Mercury dime is in AG or fair. Why is that?
Yeah, there's interesting explanations behind the average condition of both of these coins. So in the 19 teens, there was an extremely high demand for small coinage in commerce. Couple that with a very low mintage for dimes, that means that kind of all of the 16D dimes went into commerce immediately, circulated heavy, and kind of nobody really cared about them at the time. Back then, like coins weren't really collected by mint marks. This is just like a 1916 dime. So no one cared to kind of pull them out of circulation. I mean, even if people knew that they were a lower mintage, it just didn't matter that much until much later when collecting by mint mark became more popular. It was already too late and all the 16D dimes had circulated really low. Whereas something like the 1955 double die, the news of that coin existing, that there were 1955 cents with really dramatically doubled lettering, was announced very shortly after they were produced. So kind of as soon as they went into circulation, hundreds of thousands or probably millions of people were immediately looking for those coins in circulation and hoping to pull them out. I actually looked, interestingly, if you take a look at the PCGS population reports, they list just 5 total examples of 55 double dies in all VF grades.
That's insane.
That's pretty amazing.
That's like nothing. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, incredible. I mean, if you look at 16D dimes, there are many thousands in AG.
Yeah.
But the single lowest double die obverse 55 cent graded by PCGS is a single VF25.
That's insane. Thank you for that insight. That's really cool.
These are kind of represent 2 different ends of the spectrum of how coins may survive.
Yeah, and let's move to actually another coin, another key date, also in low grade. Let's look at an 01S Barber quarter. This one is CAC approved AG3. I bought this one in Rosemont from a dealer who actually, no, this is part of a trade, another trade deal. And like I said, I like my key dates. Am I correct in guessing, Owen, that this is a similar story as the 16D dime, which is why the ONS is?
Exactly right, and that goes for a lot of Barber coins. Some coins like Standing Liberty quarters, like those are kind of just saved, and a lot of them are saved on uncirculated grades, but Barber coins kind of weren't graced the same way, though. I mean, these things were really workhorses of commerce at the time.
Yeah, this one, and similar, like we said, the people didn't realize that the ONS was the rarity that it was until many, many years, and a lot of them ended up being in low grade. So here's a perfect example of a key date, ONS Barber quarter. And this is a many $1,000 coin. It turns out to be extremely rare, and the key date of the Barber quarter series, CAC approved and ready to go. So that's cool. Well, now we'll go to the other end of the spectrum from AG to GEM. Here is a 1929 Standing Liberty quarter MS65 full head CAC approval graded by CACG. I bought this from one of my favorite wholesalers. Again, had to dig through a bunch of his boxes, and he had just done a big submission to CACG, and I was able to snag a couple of these fresh from CACG. You know, these are freshly graded, haven't been auctioned, haven't been on the market. So this is the first of that group that I bought. What do you think?
Yeah, this coin's like a nice mini lesson on what to look for when it comes to standing overdate quarters. I think you did a really good job picking this one out. It checks all my boxes. It has this like really nice complex luster throughout the obverse and reverse. There's not a ton of big marks to speak of. Importantly, it's well struck. There's a great strike variance on these standing overdate quarters. And for the viewers not familiar with it, that's what that full FH means in the grade. That's a strike designation. That's acknowledging that the head detail is fully struck, full head. I mean, I would say most standing overdate quarters do not have full heads, so it's important to look for ones that do if you're trying to build a set or typeset with well struck coins.
And can you remind everyone, what are the points we're looking for? I know we're going to try to pull in close on the video here. What are the actual points we're looking for on the head to get a full head designation?
It actually changes a little bit throughout the series because the head was slightly designed. But broadly speaking, you want to look for a nice hairline at the forehead to where the foliage and her hair begins. You want to see 3 prominent sprigs there above her ear, and you want to be able to see something of an ear hole.
And those all appear to be present here. And then if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not part of the designation, but you want to look at the rivets on the shield also. Is that right? That's another way of looking at it?
Yeah, I think it's important not to use like strike designations as too much of a crutch. There are some standing overdate quarters out there that are hammered at the head and still pancaked everywhere else.
Right.
So look for ones that do have full heads, but like you said, I mean, that's one of the best spots also to look at. Those shield rivets are also going to be one of the most poorly struck things on standing overdate quarters. So if you see those shield rivets, that's how you know it's coupled with a full head. That's a really well struck coin.
Yeah, and this one, like, I'm looking on the camera right here, and I can see the full outline and designation there. So this one is a very, very, very clear full head example, and I definitely like those. So a fun one. Okay, and the next coin is another key date. Have a nice little run of key date stuff here. Here is the key date Washington Quarter 32D AU58, graded by CACG. Bought this from that same dealer who had this run of CACG coins. And I liked this coin. This coin had a look that lots of 32Ds didn't have. Owen, what do you think? I mean, what do 32Ds normally look like? And did I do all right on this one?
Yeah, this is definitely an unusual look for a 32D quarter. I don't know the exact explanation for it, but if you go on eBay and you look up like slider, 58 to 62 examples of this date, they're almost all just hideous. They're like brown or black and just gross looking. Unfortunately, most of them are so tarnished that they can't be restored because the toning has kind of eaten into the coin itself. So if you try to restore them, you'll just expose like burnt out metal. So this is kind of a big outlier of example. This is just like a nice, flashy, attractive, lustrous example of the date, and you don't have to spend many thousands of dollars to get it.
Yeah, and it is an AU. Like a lot of people, this is, I think, an important lesson that we should all be learning. That a lot of people who are just getting into the hobby might look at this and say, well, that coin looks mint condition. It's shiny, it's got luster, but it really is an AU. What are the telltale giveaways that this is an AU when you look at this?
I think the best way to explain it in a digestible way is that there's kind of like 2 different shades of gray on this coin. And what that is that some of the coin is mostly untouched. Whereas if you look at kind of like the front of the hairline where his hair meets his forehead, there's like this slightly brighter gray. That's the very, very earliest stages of wear.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of different type of gray is what you should be looking for when you're trying to figure out if a coin has been lightly circulated or not.
And I think this would categorize as a slider, which means literally, it slid when the coin was not certified, and just a little bit of friction on there. This is a coin that I would call a gem AU. This is a coin that, 60 is not one notch above this coin. I think this coin probably would go from, 58 to 64 or 65. And we're getting into some, deeper coin stuff here, but the reality is that it's a really nice AU58, and I really like it. And I'm glad Owen agrees. So.
This is the kind of coin that most coin dealers are going to buy as a 58 and sell as a 62.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, let's move on to the next denomination. Let's look at a $50 and some $50. We're going to start with an 1809 $50 PCGS AU50 in the old green holder. I bought this as part of a trade deal in Rosemont. And, what I liked about this coin was I'm a big fan of Cap Plus halves, and I love the detail level on the coin. A lot of these come very weakly struck. What do you think? How did I do on this one?
Yeah, this one's great. I don't think this one's going to last long on the website. Nothing pairs better than early U.S. silver and OGH, PCGS holders. I love the kind of peripheral color on this one. Like if you look at there at the edges, like that brightness and luster coming through, that's real mint luster still peeking through.
Yeah, look at the angle
right
here.
Highlighting.
You can see it right here on the angle. Like that's a rainbow with real mint luster coming through on the edges there.
Yeah, and I know you go through a lot of wholesale boxes, and there's no shortage of these coins out there, but I think this one's above average, especially so for the strike. When you see these like kind of earlier date Kappa's half dollars out there, what do most of them look like in terms of strike when you see them?
I mean, they're all like, it's actually a big challenge that I have with these coins is that they look like they're worn. The hair is all flat. And, by the way, you can tell me, this. I'm terrible at grading these things because I'll look at something that you guys will call an AU and I'll be like, well, that looks like a VF and it's because it's weakly struck. This one, no doubt in my mind that there's a detail on that hair. This is a well struck coin. So, Owen, my question on this coin is, why is it AU50? What would is this correctly graded? What would need to be seen on this coin to get it to like a 53 or a 55, given how nice the strike is?
Yeah, I think the grade's spot on. It definitely doesn't lack in the eye appeal or sharpness department. I think for a higher AU grade, it would need better luster. So as you start to advance up the ladder toward 58, 58 is practically full luster with just a hint missing. Whereas 50 is kind of just the last remnants of peripheral luster. So I think this coin is kind of a textbook AU50.
Yeah, better than a 45. There's not enough wear, I think, to get this down to a 45. But, we'd want to see more luster in the fields and around on the portrait to get into a 53. So let's move to a later half dollar. This is probably one of my top 2 coins in this batch. I'm saving the absolute number 1 coin for the very last coin. But other than that, this is one of my favorites. Here's an 1875 seated Liberty half. And talk about luster, man. Tell me, what do you see with this? 62 CAC. How does this guy look?
If you're on a 65 taste with a 62 budget, this is your coin.
I love that.
If you're like walking by this at a case in a coin show, and I saw this coin, it looks fully gemmed to me. It's at least a 64. Like that strong, flowing luster like that is a real characteristic of a high grade coin. If you go on eBay and look up MS62 seated halves, for the most part, they're just going to be ugly.
Yeah, you get these dull, washed out, like darker mint state, but like bleh. MS62 is like a blah grade.
Yeah, definitely.
So why is this only a 62 then? Why isn't this a 64 or 65?
Yeah, I think this one, like I said, it's way above 62 in terms of luster, but I think it's more abraded than usual.
Yeah, you can kind of see that in the fields. There's, it's a little ticky. By the way, none of these bother me, but like they're definitely there. Like there are abrasions in the field, and there's, it's a little ticky. But CAC liked it, and it certainly got an original satiny look. Man, if I could have every seated half on Earth look and even halfway as nice as this coin, I'd be a very, very happy collector. I think this is just.
I would not mind buying 1,000 seated half dollars that look like this.
Yeah. Well, speaking of gems, here's the next coin that we're going to look at that is actually a gem. Here's a 1915D Barber half. PCGS MS65 CAC approval. When I was a kid growing up, I was super into the Barber coinage, and to own a mint state 65 Barber coin, any denomination, was a dream for me. I could afford, AG common date, Barber quarters. Now that the fact that I'm holding an MS65 CAC Barber half in my hand is like super exciting for me. This is actually the second time we've owned this coin. I took this back in trade. I sold it to a collector, probably about a year ago, and he, loved it and enjoyed it and wanted a different coin of ours, so he traded it back to us. So I'm very excited to own this for a second time and be able to offer it to folks. How did I do on this one, Owen? Do you like this?
Yeah, this is great. I think it's another textbook example for the grade. So for a gem Barber half, what do you want to see is a nice bright coin, right? Nice luster throughout. Nice frosty surfaces and not too abraded. So it's got a few trivial abrasions here, right? I mean, we still got a couple points between this and 70. It's not going to be a perfect coin, but you don't want to see too many of them. You don't want to see like slide marks on the cheek from an album or anything like that on a gem coin. This coin's totally free of anything distracting like that. If you ask me, I mean, this coin faces up like, I don't know, it looks like a 5-figure coin to me. This is like an under $3,000 coin. So if you're putting together like a CAC approved gem type set, I think this is kind of one of your best candidates for your Barber half dollar.
Speaking of 5-figure coins, let's jump into a coin that is actually a 5-figure coin. This is a 1917D reverse mint mark Walker in MS65 plus with CAC approval. You get all of the credit on this coin. You spotted this coin in one of our favorite wholesaler boxes. And I think the words that you said were, this is one of the finest 17D reverse Walkers I have ever seen. Tell me about this coin. What makes this so spectacular?
Yeah, that wasn't an over-exaggeration. It's important to put into perspective the rarity of this date. If this was like a 1947D in this grade, I don't know, it's like $100 commodity coin. Whereas for this coin, this is one of just 5 examples graded 65 plus by PCGS, and there are just 5 examples finer, all in 66. So this is in the top 10 coins and half a point away from being in the top 5.
Yeah, on Earth in PCGS. Now there's some other NGC coins, and I'm sure there's some ANACS coins out there, but we think PCGS is king on stuff like this, and I would be willing to say that this is one of the top 10 17D reverse Walkers on Earth. I mean, it's just gorgeous. I mean, it's got color, it's got luster. You nailed it on this one.
Yeah, I think the one thing, if I had to point out one of my favorite features about this coin, it kind of has this like really gentle, fragile skin throughout it. So you can look at this coin and it has kind of what looks like a film on it. It does have a film. If you took your fingernail and drug it across this coin, it would leave like a line behind. So I think the fact that it's completely intact and not messed with serves as a fact. Like this coin was at some point a long time ago tucked away and preserved by someone, and it was literally never been touched since. I think this coin is just amazing and a unicorn example of the date.
Yeah, and the film, being like almost like some toning, or not like a negative residue, but like actual patina that has formed on the surface of the coin and has given it that gentle. I mean, you can almost see it's almost silvery on the left and a little golden on the right. And it's really delightful. So I mean, you knocked it out of the park on this one, and this is a 5-figure coin. I mean, this is one of the finest ones. There are a lot of people who collect Walking Liberty half dollars, and this one is going to be one of the best ones in existence. And so there's supply and demand, and so that's what makes this a 5-figure coin. One thing that's worth talking about on a coin like this is that you and I both believe this coin has a real shot at MS66. And, we tried it once for MS66. PCGS said, no, you guys are good with 5+. That's fine. And I think it's worth talking a little bit about the business side of this. There are folks out there who will maybe buy this coin and try this for a year and maybe send it to PCGS 10 times. And, the way that grading is, maybe they will get MS66 one of those 10 times with a lot of patience. And the price goes up to be very mid 5 figures at that point. I mean, it becomes a $30,000 or $40,000 coin at that point. And we really do believe that it has a shot at that. We are coin dealers, and our job is to take excellent coins and sell them. We're not going to spend the rest of our lives trying to get this coin in an MS66 holder. I would not be surprised to see it in an MS66 holder, and I would also be super excited if somebody buys this and has a wonderful financial windfall and gets it into an MS66 holder. So it's a fun coin for a collector. It's a fun coin for an upgrader, and I just think it's a super fun coin in general. All right, well, let's move on to dollars. Now we're going to move to my favorite Rarity 7 trademark series, a Draped bust dollar pre-1800. I could buy these coins all day long. Here's a $17.99 Draped bust dollar, PCGS XF45, looking toasty and original. I found this one in that first wholesaler's box. I went through hundreds and hundreds of coins, and I remember I found this one, and I kind of got a little giddy when I pulled this one out. I said, "Ooh, there we go. There's a $17.99 in XF." Oh, and what do you think of this guy?
Yeah, this is one of our favorite types, and I think this is a great example. I think my favorite feature of this one is that it has way, way above average luster for a Draped bust dollar, even an XF45. Lots of XF Draped bust dollars just don't really have much luster at all, or maybe just the tiniest hint of it. But this coin has like real swirling luster at the peripheries throughout the obverse. So I think it's way above its weight class again in that regard. Great detail again, nice original patina throughout. So this is just like a rock solid example, of a lightly circulated Draped bust dollar.
And we talked about with that cap bus half a few coins ago how, an AU50 just had traces of luster. This coin has more luster than the AU50, and this is only in a 45 holder. So that was one of the reasons why this stuck out to me as like, wow, this is like an XF with original luster, lots of detail. And I just kind of got super excited by this one. It wasn't dipped, wasn't ruined, has that kind of almost, these early Draped bust dollars have this almost, they're prized for their aged, original kind of almost rusty, crusty look, as opposed to Morgan dollars where everybody wants, blast white and super flashy. These, we want to feel like this was a coin that actually was held by, George Washington or one of the early founding fathers of this country. And it's kind of cool to think about that. Well, moving from a 1799 Draped bust dollar in XF, now we'll move a little later to another Draped bust dollar. This coin is only in fine 15, 1802, just past the 1800s, turn of the century. But again, my favorite series, a beautiful, dirty Draped bust dollar. Took this coin in on trade. CAC graded it and approved it. What do you think of this guy, Owen?
Yeah, I love this one. It's got a great patina throughout. This is what like a 200-year-old well-circulated silver coin should look like. You want to avoid coins that are bright and look like a piece of silverware. That's not what you want to buy. This kind of like really dark gunmetal gray thing is what you want to see for a fine coin that's over 200 years old.
Yeah, I like this one. When the client put this on the table as one of his trade coins, I got a little giddy again because it was like, ooh, I'm going to get a Draped bust dollar. I know I'm losing one of my favorite coins that I'm selling to him, but we're getting a Draped bust dollar in trade. So I was kind of super excited about that one. So a nice, fine 15. Well, let's move later to a trade dollar. And this is a weird kind of trade dollar called a Chopmarked trade dollar, AU58. Kind of looks a little beat up, but as we've learned, it's not actually beat up. Oh, and tell me what you think about this wild Chopmarked trade dollar.
I am a seller of this coin and not a buyer. I don't personally love Chopmarked trade dollars, especially not ones. If you look at this coin, you see these kind of like damaged things that aren't chop marks. You're correct. Those are called drill marks.
So that's a drill mark there. Yep.
Yeah, that's a literal drill mark. When these things went overseas into commerce, there were a lot of circulating counterfeits back then called contemporary counterfeits. So you had to check that the money was real. So how do you make sure it's not plated? Well, you get a literal drill, you drill into the coin, and you test some metal from the center where it wouldn't be, you wouldn't be testing plating. You're really testing the coin at that part. So it's cool in that regard, and I think this coin has like some appeal as a novelty. I would rather like a really chop marked $100 8 real than a many $100 chop mark and drilled mark trade dollar. So yeah, I'm not totally head over heels for this one. I think it's more of a novelty piece to me.
I love disagreeing with you. It's super fun. And this is the wonderful thing about these coins, because I think a lot of people would look at this coin and say chop mark, and in fact, the grading companies for many years called this damaged. They would say details damage, chop marks. And then it was because there was a big vocal group of collectors who said, no, this is actually collectible. This coin traveled overseas in the late 1870s. It was used in commerce, and it circulated in China and other countries in East Asia. And the merchants would get these and they'd put their little mark, and that's what they call these chop marks, in the coins, in addition to drilling them out and checking them. And this is like a historical record of this coin's time in commerce. I personally love it. I find these fascinating coins, and I think PCGS and I think NGC, but it might just be PCGS, recently changed their designation to recognize that this is a straight graded coin that is legitimately and authentically chop marked. So a lot of folks are super into collecting these. I love that it's beat up. I love the drill marks. I love that the coin is showing its time in commerce and it tells a story. I'm a fan personally of coins that tell stories. And I think this is a great example of a coin that tells a lot of stories. But on the other hand, I do understand your point, Owen, which is like, if I cut my initials in a coin, they call that graffiti. But now all of a sudden that, since it was in commerce over in Asia, they call it Chopmarked. So this is a good example of a complex series. And I'm a fan. Owen is not. And we'll see if I'd love your guys' thoughts. Maybe leave some comments and tell me what you think of Chopmarked coins and of this one.
Someone buy this coin and put it out of its misery.
All right, well, let's move to coins that we can both agree on further. Let's look at a nice OGH 1879S Morgan dollar, MS66 CAC. Owen, you found this coin for us. You done good on this one. It's beautiful OGH, original. We're huge fans of OGH with the green CAC sticker. It's both aesthetically interesting and super cool. I'm also showing my age a little bit. When I started collecting, these weren't called OGH. They were just called PCGS holders because that's what we had back in the day when I was a young numismatist in this world. But now they're super collectible, and I guess I'm an ON now, an older numismatist, and collecting OGH coins. So you found this coin. What drew you to this coin? Why did you decide to add this one to inventory?
I don't think there's much not to like about this coin. I do love the aesthetic of like a green CAC sticker and a green label, right? That's just awesome. And paired with an earlier date S-Mint Morgan dollar and choice gem. And this is not an expensive coin. This is like a few $100s. It's not absurd. It's just an awesome coin and a lot of coin for the money.
And, I will note something that it's got some of that similar nice, good, original, filmy look on the reverse that Walker had, that almost bluish. And that's that original patina that, you love, I love, and that CAC loves. So this has a really nice original look to it. And I'm very, very pleased that you chose to add this. Owen, that actually reminds me of a good question. We started to touch on this with one of the coins previously. Can you tell me, I think a lot of collectors have learned that film, or PVC in particular, is bad. Thumbs down to that. You want to get rid of the film. But as we've learned, CAC loves this coin. I love this coin. You love this coin. What is the difference between what we would call a good film and a bad film? And one of my collector buddies on Instagram likes to call it happy haze versus bad haze. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's definitely differences in types of films. I think a lot of new collectors kind of push back on this concept, but there's a good explanation why. In my head, there's kind of three types of films, basically, right? There's ones that are applied, right? So this is something like, maybe there's a really big mark on a gold coin. Maybe a coin doctor will take some kind of like putty or substance to apply it over the mark and make it less bright, right? That's definitely a really bad type of film. That's the worst type of film. Second to that, there's kind of like film from poor environments, right? So the most common one is if you have like a cheap coin album or coin flips, they'll have a plasticizer in them that abbreviates to PVC, polyvinyl chloride, and that can interact with the environment and leach chemicals out onto your coin, and it'll turn this like nasty green, and that green is not environmentally stable. It can actually interact with the metal in the coin and do all kinds of like nasty things to your coin and ruin it. That's a really bad film. But there's also kind of a good kind of film. So if you look at this coin, it's not perfect, right? There's like something on this coin. If you ask me, that serves as testament that this coin's not been like, dunked in acid a bunch, or cleaned or scrubbed in any way. That's like really fragile. You could flick that off with your fingernails. So that stuff serves as kind of like proof that this coin's not been harmed in any way.
Almost like a harmless layer of dust, metaphorically speaking, on an old book, you'd blow it off to show that,
Yeah, like if you bought, a really cool 400-year-old book, you wouldn't take it to your kitchen sink and start cleaning off its leather cover. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, this is like the coin equivalent of that. This is like a beautiful original coin, and it's kind of frozen in time.
Love that. I absolutely love that. Well, let's move to another OGH. We'll move to an 1880 CC. And this coin has, also an original look to it. Another OGH. This is an MS63, not quite as good as the MS66 that we just looked at. But again, I like it. I love that it's an OGH. I love the CAC sticker. Do you like this coin as well?
Yeah, I really like this coin. But just being honest with the viewers, this is a very available coin in MS63. There's no shortage of 1880 Carson City dollars out there in uncirculated grades. But they're definitely hard to find in an older PCGS holder and CAC approved. There's way fewer of these than just generic, modern graded 63s. So this is another example of kind of a common coin and a not so common holder combination.
And if I remember correctly, 80cc is a slightly better CC date than like an 82, 83, or 84. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. 82, 83, and 84 were the coins that were most plentifully represented in the GSA hoard of Carson City silver dollars. There were certainly quite a number of 1880s, but not as many as those other dates.
Yeah, it's. I think I'd call this like a second tier on the Carson City rarity on the rarity front. Well, speaking of the more common ones, and we're going to dive into some of the intricacies of the CC coins. Let's look at this 82cc, and this is an MS63 deep mirror proof-like. Owen, can you? And so this is going to be one of the more common coins. I have two questions about this coin. I found this coin in an estate sale. I hunt everything. We look, part of our job here at Rarity 7 is to look high and low at estate sales, at dealer boxes and everything, and kind of find the cream of the crop, literally, for everybody. So I found this coin in an estate sale. I liked it. It's a deep mirror proof like. Also, I personally have an affinity for DMPLs. It was my favorite series of or variety of Morgan when I was a kid, and I'd always dreamed of owning a deep mirror proof. Like I couldn't afford them, so I would always like pretend that my nice mint state raw Morgan dollars were DMPLs. But so it's always, I get a little excited every time we get a DMPL Morgan dollar. Why are I've seen a lot of DMPLs on this Carson City series. Can you tell everyone a little bit about why the DMPLs are so prevalent among CC Morgans?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of these Carson City dollars in DMPL for a few different reasons. One, a very large portion of the original mintage was saved, leaving for a lot of candidates to exist today as proof-like examples. And I think the dies and minting processes at Carson City Mint were clearly well refined. The Carson City Mint knocked it out of the park in making really, really high-quality, attractive coins. They're almost universally well-struck, reflective to some extent. You never really see a really poorly made Carson City coin. There's a few exceptions to that where a few dates they didn't do so great on a few denominations, but for the most part, the Carson City Mint coinage are poster childs of well-made coins.
Yeah, some of the best deep mirror proof likes I've ever seen among Morgan dollars are some of the CC coins. We had previously an 85cc that I bought from in an ANACS holder in ultra deep mirrors, and it ended up being across to PCGS. We sold it a few months ago, but that was like ANACS gave it that ultra deep mirror designation because it was incredibly well made and it was a monster of a coin. So we were excited by that. My second question on this coin in particular, it's MS63. Frankly, that cheek looks really good for an MS63. There's not a lot of marks and hits on this coin. I think it's really, really solid. What I did notice on the coin is that there is a little patch of lines down here. And, my first inclination when I looked at that was like, oh boy, that's real hairlines. And then you and I were talking about this coin. Can you explain to everyone what that is and what the origin of that is?
Yeah, those are real hairlines, but it's not the end of the world. I think this coin is kind of like a 64 with, professional graders are going to call that a wipe. So what's the difference between that and hairlines inflicted by cleaning? Hairlines inflicted by cleaning are kind of going to go in all different kinds of directions. They're going to be much brighter than this, and the coin's luster will actually change on a clean coin. So if you look at the luster of this coin, it still rotates in a very natural cartwheel fashion, whereas a clean coin, it's going to look altered and different. So what imparts these wipes? Well, I hate to say it, I'm not exactly certain. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with something that happened at the mint itself. These coins weren't really run through coin counters too often. They definitely were, but not so much that it explains. I would say there are many millions of Morgan dollars out there with these exact light wipes on them. So I think these wipes were imparted by some process at the mint. And they're not a deal breaker when it comes to professional grading. If you have a giant one that maybe spans the entire obverse, right, that's going to be a problem and the coin might be no graded. But a Carson City dollar with a light wipe that covers just a small portion of the obverse, that's like a very routine thing when it comes to coin grading, and you just have to factor it into your numerical grade.
Yeah, that's super cool, and I think that's why this coin gets to a 63. By the way, I'm just as I'm spitting the coin. I mean, you can the amazing amount of detail that I can see. I can see the brand of my camera in the mirrors on there. Lumix. It's a Panasonic Lumix, and this is the first coin that I've been able to see that on. So these are real deep mirrors, and this is a real deep mirror proof like coin. And we'll look at the next coin that we've got. This is an 1883 Morgan dollar in MS64 deep mirror proof like. And the 83 O's, and actually we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, the difference between the production methods at the New Orleans Mint and the Carson City Mint. Can you tell us on this coin, first off, why is it notable that this OGH, this is actually a 2.1, this is the really OGH holder when they had the little gasket around in the middle, it's almost like a little mini rattler. This is particularly notable because it's an OGH with a CAC sticker. Tell us a little bit about this coin, Owen.
Yeah, the OGH and CAC sticker on a dimple can kind of be a scarce combination because grading standards for proof-like and deep mirror proof-like coins have really tightened since grading was conceived. For the viewers who are not familiar, these are business strike, right, mint state coins that were struck to be used in commerce. So what proof-like means is that the fields are reflective and they look like a proof coin, right? So there are two levels to this. If they have exceptionally deep mirrors and usually kind of like a nice cameo contrast, meaning that the devices will usually have kind of like a white frosty look to them where the fields will be more reflectively mirrored. They can qualify for the designation you see here, which is deep mirror proof like. So it's kind of the most extreme version of that. In the 1980s, when third-party grading services were taking off, the market requirements for this were just much looser. The mirrors didn't have to be nearly as crisp or measure as deep. I've seen coins and dimple holders that don't even qualify for a modern PL designation. So when you're buying the proof-like or deep mirror proof-like coins in older holders, you have to be really careful and police the designation and make sure that it meets modern requirements for proof-like and deep mirror proof-like coins.
And what's interesting about this is that, a lot of people, the conventional wisdom is, if we can find an old holder, grading standards have loosened in most areas since then. So a lot of people love buying old holder coins and then sending them off to CAC to get a sticker. And it's the exact opposite with deep mirror proof likes. So when we find deep mirror proof likes in an old holder and a CAC sticker, that is a special coin. And that's why I got this coin, because I said, all right, it's an actual deep mirror proof like by today's modern standards, and CAC has approved that. So this was a really fun one. Well, this is a 64 deep mirror proof like, and here's a great example for us to talk a little bit about plus designations, because the next coin on here, same date, 830, but this is a 64 plus deep mirror proof like example. And this is just a little bit better. PCGS basically said not quite a 65, but still meets deep mirror proof like. Owen, can you, I'm actually going to hold these two coins side by side so that we can look at them. Can you tell us, and it's a little hard to do over the camera, why you would consider this one here a plus, and maybe why it might not be good enough to get to 65 deep mirror?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I think the coin on the left is just as well preserved as the coin on the right. They didn't do plus grading on OGH holders. Maybe if you sent that coin in today, it might plus.
Don't do that, by the way. Anyone who buys this coin, don't crack it. Don't give up the OGH just to get a plus. It's not worth it.
Yep, keep that one in the OGH. But for the coin on the right, I think to see 65 on this one, I don't see any shortcomings on the reverse. I think the obverse just has a few too many light marks there in the left field.
Yeah.
I think if there were a few less marks there in the left field, that this one would pretty easily qualify for 65.
Yeah. And I think it's just a hair away, but otherwise you're right. That reverse is like both, high contrast, flashy, and basically no mark. So just a hair away from a 65 deep mirror proof like. Okay, well, we'll continue our tour of Morgan dollars. We've just got a few more on these, and we got a nice run of OGHs. Here is an 85cc OGH in GEM MS65, a one of the slightly better date Carson Cities. I think I bought this coin in Rosemont as well. Kind of saw it, and for the same reasons that we've talked about, I loved it. What do you think about this one compared to the other ones that we've been looking at?
Yeah, if you look at the surfaces of this one, you no longer see those kind of mirror-like traits. So this is a really good segue of coins with mirrored fields and frosty devices into a coin that's totally matte throughout. And both proof-like and not proof-like coins like this have their pros and cons, right? This is attractive in a different way. So I think this is another great GEM OGH CAC approved example of a Carson City Morgan dollar.
Yeah, and I like it. I think it's a solid coin. I like 85 CCs in general. This is one of the slightly better dates, and super, super happy to own this coin. Here we have an 89 Carson City in VF20. We're going to the other end of the wear spectrum. And, this is one of the key dates in the Morgan series, along with the 93S. This is one of the tough ones. What's interesting is that, I'm going to take this one out. If this 89 Carson City were in an MS65 holder, this would be a $300,000 coin. What is the deal with why are those values so wildly different, even though both coins were made in Carson City?
So we mentioned earlier that most dates of Carson City dollars were very well represented in the GSA hoards. So for the viewers not familiar, a very large portion of Carson City silver dollars were never actually distributed by the government and were instead retained and later sold in the GSA hoard sale of the 1970s. Many millions of coins were sold. I actually have a couple statistics noted here. So for example, of the 1884 Carson City dollars, of which there was a little over 1 million struck, about 900,000 were available in the hoard. So when this date was only represented by a single coin, you don't have all those coins that were just saved and later sold to collectors. These coins were subjected to very, very heavy use in commerce, and not many survived unscathed.
Yeah. So this is fun. I love key dates, and the 89cc is a key date. So a fun example of a key date, and you can just kind of imagine and pretend that this coin was the one GSA coin that was offered for $1 million, and here it is in VF20. Used to be
world's most expensive pocket piece.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we'll move to our last Morgan dollar in this sale. Here is a 91.0 Morgan dollar in MS64 CAC. A beautiful coin, lovely looking. Oh, and my question for you on this one, when I look at this coin and I compare this to some of the other coins that we looked at, this looks almost like a different kind of coin. Can you talk a little bit about the differences of New Orleans coins versus some of the other ones? I'm going to pull out one of those mint CCs just to kind of compare.
Yeah, this is a great example of manufacturing differences. So Carson City dollars are often hailed as the best produced silver dollars, whereas New Orleans mint dollars are often live in infamy for kind of being the most poorly produced silver dollars. So they were just struck with very low minting standards. The presses were obviously not striking these at the strength required to strike out the design elements fully. That's why if you look at the hair above the ear, you see this very noticeable flatness that's not present on those Carson City dollars. That has nothing to do with wear. The millisecond this coin came off the dies, it had that piece of flatness. It's just because the coining press was not set to the correct standards to fully strike out this coin. It's extremely common for New Orleans mint dollars to have that. It's kind of an exception when a coin is well struck from New Orleans, whereas the inverse is true for Carson City coins.
And this, it has kind of a look to it. I think you once told me that you could identify the mint of the coin just by looking at the obverse. Is that true?
Yeah, as a professional grader, the most common coin you grade is Morgan dollars, and most of them are uncirculated, or at least the ones that you see in the grading room are. So I've seen many millions of uncirculated Morgan dollars. If you were to show me this coin, I'm looking at it now, and I see the 1891 date. I'm thinking about what these look like. And the 1891 Philadelphia would be better struck, but not as lustrous. The San Francisco mint example is going to be really, really sharply struck and incredible looking and kind of flashy bright. A Carson City example would be more, probably better struck, but more matte looking. The one that gives this away to me is the strike alone and kind of this soft, frosty luster throughout. That's just perfect hallmark New Orleans characteristics. So I could tell very easily this coin's made in New Orleans just by looking at the front of it.
Yeah, the other thing that stands out to me is you can see it doesn't have that like frosty contrast that a lot of the other ones have. New Orleans actually, interestingly, look more like the modern Morgan dollars, the 2023-24, that kind of have a uniform satiny look to them and not that frost all over. It's just kind of the telltale New Orleans look.
Yeah, I never thought about that. You're exactly right. They do definitely look most like the modern ones, where they kind of have this like soft, gentle matte look, but it's totally even throughout. From the cheek to the field, they kind of look the same. Whereas that's not very true on other dates like Carson Cities.
Yeah, a fun coin, a nice CAC approved near gem. Well, speaking of differences in coins, let's move on to some piece dollars, because I've got 2 piece dollars here that we're going to look at, and they have dramatically different looks, and I'd love to compare and contrast them. So both gem or better. Here is a 1923 piece dollar in MS66 plus with CAC approval. This is, a condition coin, 23 being one of the more common dates. And then the other piece dollar I have is a 1924 CAC graded MS65. And man, and these coins are like, this coin almost looks sandblasted. It's got this like almost rough, I personally love the look, but it's got almost this sort of textured finish to it. And the 23 has a more sort of flashy, satiny finish to it. Can you tell us a little bit about, again, we're talking manufacturing differences on these 2 coins?
Yeah, again, there's just very minor manufacturing variances from year to year. So that comes down to both the ways that the dies were produced and the way that they were used. So very, very subtle differences can lead to kind of pretty dramatic differences in the way that a coin faces up. So if you look at this coin here, it has this kind of like very brilliant and smooth luster. Whereas if we look at the other date, the 1924, it's definitely really lustrous, but it has this like kind of, I like it, I love it. It's a very granular matte kind of look throughout. That look is almost unique to 1924 piece dollars. Sometimes you'll see 1925s that kind of have a similar look to them, but I love this matte look on piece dollars. If you can find some of these 1924s and like even 66 or 67 with that look. They just look fantastic. So I think this example represents a really interesting and fascinating looking gem approved piece dollar for not a ton of money.
Yeah. And by the way, on this point, 66 plus the CAC approval, 65. Would you be shocked to see this coin in a PCGS 66 holder at some point?
No, not at all. I mean, if you ask me, I think this coin's fine to call a 66. The reason I don't think that we're pursuing that grade is it's just worth a fair amount of money to us as a 65 CAC. If we were to upgrade it, we lose the CAC approval and have a whole new set of problems. So we're perfectly happy to sell this coin as a conservatively graded 65.
Yeah, it's a choice 65, and if you want to buy this coin and get it in a 66 holder, be our guest. I think you've got a real shot at it, and it is beautiful. So 2 fun piece dollars. Well, let's move on now to Owen's favorite series. You tend to find a lot of these for us, and here is a gold dollar. We buy and sell a lot of gold dollars. They're really fun little coins, and they're tiny little baby coins, but they're great, and they're gold, and it's from the 1850s. How can you not love an 1850s piece of gold? How do we do on this one? How do you like this guy?
Yeah, I really love this. I mean, everybody knows by now I have a soft spot for gold dollars. I love this series because it's one of the few gold coins left that they're never traded as just bullion. Like most 20 libs, 20 Liberty gold pieces, trade as just commodity coins, as bullion. Whereas kind of all gold dollars that exist today are still like collectible, cool coins. And they're just odd, right? They're unusual. Not many people even know that these were ever made. So I really love them. The parts that I like most about this one, it's really well struck. It's got a lot of luster for kind of an earlier date gold dollar. And if you look at the obverse here, we were looking at some Morgan dollars that had proof-like traits. Well, you're actually starting to see that on this coin too. The devices are kind of matte and not reflective, whereas the fields on the obverse, at least, are actually pretty reflective. So this is kind of like a semi-proof-like obverse paired over a really matte, beautiful, lustrous reverse. So again, we try to buy coins that offer a lot of cool factor for the money, and I think this is a great example of coins that we try to keep in inventory.
So this next coin is an 1853 D AU58 gold dollar. Now, I'm a huge fan of branch mint coins, and by the way, when I was a collector as a kid, I would have seen this coin and said 1853 Denver because that's what D is for. Well, turns out I learned this later as I grew up a little bit. Denver Mint did not start making coins until after 1900. So this coin is Dahlonega, and this comes from the Eastern Gold Rush in Dahlonega, Georgia. It is a, speaking of collectible coins that are not based on their gold value, this is not an inexpensive coin. This is going to be over $5,000, well over $5,000, because Dahlonega gold is very rare. It comes from the Eastern Gold Rush. But Owen, normally we don't buy NGC AU coins because those generally look pretty crappy. And when I showed you this coin, tell me what you said when you saw this.
I mean, this is way above average for a piece of Dahlonega mint gold. Most of these that you see, unfortunately, even graded ones, are going to be like way too bright. A lot of them have been clean but are decided as being market acceptable, or they have problems like scratches or gouges or rim bumps. Whereas you look at this coin and it just doesn't have any catches. I mean, there's like, I wish it weren't circulated. That would be really awesome, but it is, and it's graded accordingly. But there's just like nothing bad to say about this coin. And it's one thing to be able to say that about something like a Carson City dollar, where many millions of them were made and hundreds of thousands exist in UNC grades. That's not very easy to say about something like Dahlonega mint gold. I mean, I encourage our viewers, the next time you're at a coin show, local or even national, walk the floor and try to find a single piece of Dahlonega mint gold. That in and of itself is a challenge. Find a nice piece. You're probably not going to find one, even at a national show. They're really, really hard to find.
And if you do, it's going to be 5 figures, not 4 figures. So the demand, and it's really rare. It comes from you should all read up about Dahlonega. Maybe we'll do a whole episode about Dahlonega gold at some point. But we need to buy a lot of Dahlonega gold in order to make that happen. But it would be certainly a fun challenge. But it comes from the Eastern Gold Rush that was sparked in the times of gold rush fever in the United States. The 1849ers had moved off to the West Coast to mine gold there, and it turns out we'd found gold on the East Coast as well, and that sparked the creation of the mints in Dahlonega and Charlotte, North Carolina. So branch mint gold is a really, really fun topic, and if you want to get into it, there's a lot of really, really great pieces out there. This is a little bit more of an advanced piece because this is a tougher date and a tougher denomination. Let's move back to New Orleans. We're going to move to still the 1850s. Here's an 1850 $2.50 Liberty coin in AU55 with CAC approval.
Yeah, I really like this one. I think I've mentioned it in a few of our prior videos. There's certain looks that you do and don't want on gold coins. And what you don't want is like a really bright, monochromatic, brassy looking gold color. You want what this coin looks like, which is like a nice, deep, rich yellow gold. And there's almost kind of different shades of gold throughout the coin. That's a really good sign. So if you look at like the gold that you see kind of just below the wings there, left and right wings, you see this like nice, bright, flashy yellow gold. Whereas within the wide open fields, you kind of see this deeper, darker, rich gold. Those kind of different tones of gold is kind of evidence that this coin was served its role in commerce and was never chemically treated to become really bright. So I think this is a really great example of a well-preserved, lightly circulated piece of early branch mint gold. And worth noting too, this is a single-digit population piece in the CAC reports, and less than 100,000 minted.
Here's another non-common 1869 $3 gold in PCGS AU55, so 5 points higher. Oh, and I was looking this coin up. The mintage of this coin is tiny. There's I think 2,500 of these were minted, and that's not 25,000, not 25 million. 2,500 of these coins were minted. I mean, it seems wild to me.
Yeah, I mean I didn't know that. That sounds ridiculous to me. If this was like a silver dollar, this would be like an incredibly expensive coin. But a lot less people can afford or to put together a set of $3 gold pieces. So there's naturally a little bit lower demand for that. So you get really cool opportunities like this where you can have a coin with the mintage of just 2,500 pieces for not an insane amount of money. It's definitely not a cheap one, but I think with enough saving and with determination, most collectors could afford to put this coin in their set one day.
Yeah, and I mean this is not, a bullion coin. This is not trading for gold value, but certainly relative to a mintage of 2,500 pieces, I think this coin is an incredible value. So, if you're just looking to add a $3 coin, that's a super rare coin, and I think would just make a wonderful addition to a set. I think this coin it totally hits it. So here's a 93.0 New Orleans gold coin in MS63 with CAC approval. So now we're getting out of the AU range. We're back into mint state, and we're still with New Orleans. What do you think of this choice, brilliant, uncirculated 93.0?
Yeah, this is an awesome example of New Orleans mint gold. There's not really a shortage of these coins available in uncirculated grades, but what makes this one stand out is that most of these coins are really, really beat up. I mean shredded. I would say the average uncirculated grade for these is a 61. So go on eBay, look up MS61 Owen $5 gold pieces. Those things are beat, covered in reed marks, dull and just kind of gross looking. So to have one that's been graded 63 by PCGS and then impressively approved by CAC, who's really, really harsh on these gold coins, that becomes a really, really impressive coin. There's not many 93.0s that are this nice, and let alone better. I mean, any better than this, you're talking a world-class coin that's going to be really, really expensive. You'd be competing for some of the best that exist. So I would say that this coin is just short of world-class, and I think it's a decent deal for the money, considering how many fewer coins there are that are better than this one.
Yeah, it's a cool coin. So let's go to another coin that's your purchase. This is a 1910 10 lib MS64 CAC. You found this on a buying trip at a coin shop, actually pretty near you on the East Coast. You sent it to me, and we both agreed right away. Delightful. What attracted you to this coin, and why did you buy this for us?
Yeah, what stood out to me on this one, it's not perfect. It's got some marks in the left field and a little bit on the cheek. But I feel like there's always some catch on 10 Indians. Like I swear that on the obverse, there's always like some giant whack that is just ugly. Or the cheek has these really bright scrapes on this one. So as soon as I picked this one up, it looks like a gem at first. It looks like a 65 or better. Personally, I think this coin is easily a 64 plus. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see it in a 65 holder. But I think it's correctly graded as a 64 CAC coin. But I think this is definitely a standout example of this date and of the type. This would be an awesome coin for a CAC-approved type set or DAPE set of 10 Indians.
10 Indians are by far my favorite design on gold coins. I just think they're gorgeous, and I love them. And I tend to be picky about them. And we have, I think, none in stock right now because other than this one, because we buy nice ones and they always sell. So I expect this will probably meet the same fate of being out of stock pretty soon. But man, it's a beautiful one, and thank you for finding this one. Okay, moving into bigger gold coins, we've got an 1851 20 lib here. This is I love the look of this coin. This is an AU50 with CAC approval. And, as soon as I picked this up, I found it at a dealer in Rosemont. I said, man, if the numbers work on this coin, I want to own it, because early O-mint gold, big gold is awesome. Owen, what do you think about the look and the surfaces on this coin?
Yeah, this is perfect. If you've been struggling to understand what I've been saying about nuanced look with gold coins, look no further than this one. Look at the high points of this there, kind of at Liberty's hair and everything. You're seeing this like kind of blackish gray stuff. I mean, that's like real old dirt from this thing being in commerce. If you look at the peripheries, you're kind of seeing this nice like orange-ish gold copper color. Whereas if you look at the fields, now it's like a warm honey gold. This is like everything you want to see. If this coin is low AU and just like perfectly brassy yellow throughout, that's really, really concerning. This is exactly what you want to see on an early, lightly circulated 20 lib.
Yeah, and thank you. And I love, what I like about this coin also is, New Orleans gold fluctuated a lot in its the mintages and the melting of them. A lot of these coins were melted. And so this is a great example. This is, call it, $6,500, $7,000 coin. If this coin were a 50.0 a year earlier, we'd be looking at a $10,000 coin. If this were a 54.0, which had a 3,000 coin mintage, similar to that $3 that we looked at previously, this would be a $300,000 coin in this grade. And so like the survival rates and mintages of this early New Orleans gold is just almost like a random sampling of, which survived, what the mintages were, what demand in the commerce was in the United States then. And so 510, you get the combination of affordability, relatively speaking, and honestly, frankly, now with gold at the rate that it's at, this is only double melt value, which sounds like a lot, but on some rare gold, that's nothing. That's not a lot of premium for a very, very rare Type 1 Liberty. So super fan of this coin, and I really like it. And I think it's a great opportunity and a spectacular look to go in a New Orleans or a type gold set. Here is a 1907 high relief in PCGS AU58. Now, Owen has a phrase which, when we're looking at coins, and you say, Owen, why don't you share your phrase on the high reliefs?
There's no such thing as a bad high relief.
That's right. There's only a bad price on a high relief. These coins are ridiculously cool. I am excited every time we get a chance to own a high relief in any grade. Owen, how do you like this? I mean, this is AU53. A lot of these are in mint state. How do you like this coin for AU53?
Yeah, I think this is a nice example. Again, you're seeing that slight kind of graying on this gold coin. At Liberty's breast there, you're noticing it's not quite as bright as the outside field. So that's kind of the main pickup point on how to tell that this coin has been lightly circulated. And the part that I love most about these, these high reliefs just have like an amazing aesthetic look. The design of this coin is just like absolutely jumping off it. If you've never seen one of these in hand, they're a real treat. It can't be captured on video or in images. It's something you got to see in hand. They're just absolutely beautiful.
I remember the first time that we owned one of these, I was like beside myself. This is, you can see this literally looks like a 3D metal. It's a spectacularly cool coin. And another thing about this one, dare I say value on a 5-figure coin, but the kind of lowest possible value of any high relief. You can get the worst high relief in jewelry grade condition, and you're going to be looking at like $9,000-$10,000. They basically are all going to go for that much money, no matter what. They're in such demand. They're so popular and gorgeous. And this coin is like $14,000. It's a little bit above the kind of lowest value, but it feels like a really, really reasonable price for a incredibly nice looking high relief coin. And again, I know we're talking reasonable and 5-figure coins, but if you're in the market and you're looking to get one of these, you understand that this is an incredibly good value on that. You could be looking at an MS64, an MS65, and you're going to be talking double, triple, quadruple the price of this coin. We're easily going to get over $40,000, $50,000 for some of the nicer ones. And the really nice ones get up to $100,000 and up. And obviously, this is not a mint state coin, but frankly, this looks pretty darn close. It does not have any major, digs or hits or problems on it. So overall, I'm super happy that I found this coin. And, I showed it to Owen. And of course, the first thing he said was, no such thing as a bad high relief. Just make sure the price is right. And so we figured it out, and this one is now available. So Owen, another question that I had for you on the high relief. Why are these coins, why do they only make them in 1907? What's the story behind them?
Yeah, there's kind of a lot of myths and legends behind that. Most of them are wrong. One of the most common ones is that they didn't stack well, so they were kind of problematic in commerce. I can proudly say I have actually stacked high reliefs before. They stack just fine. That's not why it's a 1-year type. They're a 1-year type because they're just really hard to make. They had to be struck multiple times. The dies were very hard to produce and very difficult to maintain. So it was only a 1-year type, and the relief was lowered just due to logistic necessities. It's much easier to make these coins in quantity with a lower relief. The dies are easier to maintain. You can make them quicker and faster and in greater quantity. So these coins are amazing. They're almost more like metals than they are coins, and they were very difficult to produce, and they were only a 1-year type because of that.
May we all be so lucky as to be able to stack 1907 high reliefs. Well, let's move on from gold to silver commemoratives as we make our way through Red Book order on this wonderful batch of coins. I have 2 1925 California Jubilee coins, both CAC grading, both MS65 gems. They look different, and one of them actually cost a little bit more. I bought them both from that same wholesaler who had a stack of brand new CACG coins. I bought these coins because I enjoy telling stories, and I think Owen and I enjoy having these conversations on camera. And I looked at these two and I said, well, this is the same grade, the same coin, the same year, the same mint, everything, same holder, but the two coins look quite different. And I thought it would be an interesting topic to discuss. So, Owen, can you tell us what you see, how you would compare and contrast these two examples? First, I'll just hold off this first one. This is the first 1925 S California Jubilee MS65, and here's the second 1925 S California Jubilee MS65. Tell us what you think, Owen.
Yeah, I think these examples are pretty close to being identical. They're conditionally very similar. I think that the coin on the left has a slightly more patina to it. So if you're a Blast White fan, right, definitely go with the coin on the right here. If you like coins with a little more, kind of toning and character to them, I think the coin on the left is probably more for you. They both have this like really interesting kind of pebbly luster. These California Commems don't have like smooth, even fields. They have these kind of like rippled, complex fields, which manifest this like really interesting looking luster. They almost look like maybe there's water in the field or something. I really like these coins in the way they look, and these are two great gem examples of the type.
Okay, moving even farther west, we look at a really interesting coin. At some point, we'll go into the history of this. This is an 1883 Hawaii dollar issued by then, at the time, the Kingdom of Hawaii. These are super collectible as U.S. coins because, Hawaii obviously is a U.S. state, but at a time was a kingdom and had a king. These coins were made in San Francisco. The United States Mint produced these coins for the Kingdom of Hawaii. One of the things that gives it away, by the way, is I noticed if you look at the date on the coin, by the way, they were made in 1883 and 1884. And this coin was struck in San Francisco. That date, they're all dated 1883, even though they were made for 2 years. That looks very much like a Morgan dollar if you zoomed in, and it's because that the mint used the punches of the dates from the Morgan dollar on these coins. So if you look at that date, it does look like the Morgan dollar. And these coins were designed by Charles Barber, super interestingly as well. So I think Hawaii dollars are super fascinating. There's a whole series of Hawaiian coinage that people love to collect. And this is an 1883 OGH coin, XF40. There's not much more to say about this one. It's a super fun one. I took this in on trade, and I've always been a fan of the Hawaiian coins. So here is a delightful 1883 Hawaii dollar. Anything to add on this one?
Yeah, this is an awesome XF example. Most circulated Hawaiian dollars can be best described as gross looking. I think that they've kind of just been like a novelty and a collectible for so long. I've mentioned it before in this channel. The longer something's been collectible for, the longer it's been subjected to all the nasty stuff that people do to coins. So Hawaiian dollars have been subjected to like many decades of people cleaning them and scrubbing them, and they look cool, right? So they're often worn as jewelry. They'll have solder on the edges. So to find one that is just like wholesomely circulated, still well detailed, but served its role, as a coin is really unusual.
Well, now we're going to move to two super interesting coins. The first one, a 1985 mint error, double denomination. And these are called, sometimes they're called 11-cent pieces. So we're going to pull in real tight on this. This is a Lincoln cent, 1985, but it was struck on a Roosevelt dime, and it was struck on a 1985p Roosevelt dime. And I think what's just fascinating about this coin is you can see the date of the Lincoln cent, but this is the reverse of the Roosevelt dime here. And we'll flip it, and there's Roosevelt's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial. So you are really, and you can see the date of the Roosevelt dime there. You can see 1985p. So this one, there's a lot of varieties of these double denom coins. This is one of the more dramatic ones that I have seen. And you must have seen a bunch of these in your time at PCGS and as a numismatist. What do you think of these guys, and how does this one stack up to some of the ones that you've seen?
Yeah, I always love seeing these. So just to clarify for the viewers at home, there's probably a lot of people who are still a bit lost. This coin started life as a blank dime planchet. So it was a copper core with layers, clad layers on the exterior. It was struck into a dime like normal. At one point, it was just a normal dime. Later on in its life, somehow it got mixed in with blank cent planchets. So the coins that were before and after this would have just been normal, 1985 Lincoln cents. But somehow, amazingly, a struck dime was mixed in there, and it was later struck with the Lincoln cent dies itself. So you kind of have this hybrid thing. A lot of people call them 11-cent coins. They're more available than you might imagine. I think a lot of people might look at this if you're not familiar with coins at all and be like, "Holy cow, that must be $1 million coin." It's definitely still valuable. It's a 4-figure coin, but it's not worth many thousands. They're available. This one's great. What you're looking for when you want to see these is you want to see like nice elements of both designs. You don't want the final striking to totally have washed out all the underlying detail. You want to see this kind of cool hybrid. This coin's a great example. No, I think you did great buying this one. It's got so many details of both designs. This is everything you want on one of these.
And by the way, you mentioned $1 million coin. Some of our friends from Instagram who are watching this will know exactly who we're talking about.
That's a great. There's someone out there who's really convinced one of these.
There's someone out there who owns one of these, and he really loves that coin. So this coin is for you, Ed.
Shout out if you're watching this video.
And he'll tell me in the comments, I'm sure, why this doesn't hold a candle to his wonderful.
No, of course not.
But anyway, I like this look. I thought this was super cool. We've owned a few of these, and sometimes you'll see the Roosevelt and Lincoln on the same side. This happens to, through random chance, got fed in with the Lincoln cent struck on the reverse of the Roosevelt dime. So a super fun coin, lots of design elements, and I think more rarely both dates are visible, which I think is one of the things. So, well, we'll move to the freak show of freak show coins. Here, I don't even know whether we can quite call this a coin. So this is a no date Lincoln cent graded MS63 red, and it's a multi-strike bonded foldover. First off, Owen, if this got handed to you in the grading room, how do you be like MS63, MS64, MS62? Not quite enough luster for a 64.
Yeah, you kind of got to take the grades with a bit of a grain of salt on these ones. So for this, when you're grading these, what you're kind of just saying is like, is it a nicely preserved one of these? And maybe that'll translate to a 63 or a 64 or a 65. These things couldn't be perfect just because of how odd they are. Interestingly for this one, as a professional grader, you see a lot of mint errors, and you get an extremely good gut feel for being able to authenticate them. When I look at this, I'm unequivocally certain that this is a genuine U.S. Mint product. Kind of the plating and the planchet is pulling apart perfectly. I can tell that the plating is the right thickness. The underlying zinc core looks correct. Everything about this looks right, but I am also humble enough to admit that if you ask me how this happened, I don't have a single clue.
And I'm sure the only one who knows how this happened was the guy who managed to pick it up or ran the machine and figured it out. Because this is a wild coin.
This looks like a bowl of linguine noodles had a baby with a Lincoln cent. I have no clue what's going on here and won't pretend to know. Now,
what I will say is that I agree with Red. There is copper here. And I think let's dig into this a little bit. By the way, I bought this coin. I pulled this up out of a dealer's box, and I just had this this was a vibe purchase. I don't know, the history of these or, what they trade for. I just kind of looked at it and I said, you know what? This coin looks like someone on Earth would want to add this to their collection for about $1,000, and I personally would pay $1,000 to put this in my collection. So I said, this is such a freak show coin. A couple things to note. It is actually a Lincoln cent. There is real detail, and you can look at the photos on our website if you can't make it out here. But you can see on this coin, there is legend where you can see the word 1 cent. You can see United States of America. The words do appear on this coin. So this was actually a struck Lincoln cent. There's I think you can see the word 1 from 1 cent down in there. But it's on there, and this is the real deal. And what happened was, the technical definition of a bonded foldover is, a piece of the coin got in, it got torn, it got mangled in the die, and the thing, flipped over multiple times as it got struck and got stuck to the die, and a whole mess load of stuff happened on there. So that is the technical term for bonded foldover, and then was eventually ejected, probably into the, the QA, wow, this is a piece to scrap metal, and then someone snuck it out of the mint. That's basically what happened. That's, you know, the guys who worked at the mint know that us crazy collectors are willing to spend $1,000 for stuff like this, because it is an actual U.S. coin that just happened to get beat the heck up in the mint, and we are super excited to own this. So and then of course, you know, got put in an ANACS soapbox. It's sort of preserved almost like a dinosaur bone or an insect or a rare artifact. So this definitely stretches the definition of, you know, U.S. coinage for us, but I just thought it was so cool. I was like, yeah, you know what, I think we got to have this. So okay, well, last but very certainly not least, this is the single coolest U.S. pattern that I have ever laid my little paws on. I picked this coin up and my jaw dropped. And every single person I have shown this coin to has had the exact same holy cow reaction to looking at this coin. This is an 1871 pattern U.S. silver dollar with a seated Liberty design. It looks nothing like any seated Liberty design that we've seen. It does have what's called the standard silver reverse. This is called a standard $1. What is so striking about this coin is that, first off, it is not a design that anyone has seen. This was made by James Longacre and it was not a circulating U.S. coin design, but it's got no stars. And so you just have these wide open mirrored fields that, because of the proof cameo designation, are black. I mean, talk about the original Black Mirror. That is this coin. I mean, you know, this just dramatic, you know, empty fields, mirror fields with this contrasted, very high relief looking design. And I mean, this coin just has a total wow factor. Owen, when I showed this to you, you got worried. You said, "Uh-oh, Noah bought a very expensive pattern." And I showed it to you. Tell me what your reaction was when I sent you the video of this coin.
Yeah, when you sent me a video of it, I warmed up to it pretty quickly. So for the viewers out there who aren't familiar with exactly what patterns are, kind of something that more people might be more familiar with and is similar. If you're into cars, we all know that car manufacturers often make prototype cars. This is kind of like the numismatic equivalent of that. So this came to be because in the 1870s, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with trying to make kind of an international trade dollar unit. What prevailed, of course, is what we know as the trade dollar. But this was also another example of what may have become. And I love the motif on this. You have Lady Liberty here kind of resting her arm on a globe to hint at the fact that this coin is to serve its role in global commerce, not just domestic commerce, but that this coin was going to serve throughout the entire world. This is an amazing coin. Really cool. I would not have minded if they eventually elected to turn this one into a standard coin and made this. I really love this.
Yeah, and this was, you know, it's just a wow coin, and I get excited by these trade dollar patterns, and, you know, of course, I love patterns in general because it's kind of this what could have been kind of thing. These were sold in sets. They were sold to collectors. Only a few dozen sets were sold. The collecting community in the 1870s was significantly smaller than it is today. So there are actually examples of this in different metals. I think they did copper, silver, aluminum. Some of them have reeded edge. Some of them have plain edge. And they were sold in denominations from half dime up to dollar. So if you want to be really challenged as a numismatist, you can start with this dollar coin, and then you can build out the rest of the set and get the half dollar, the quarter, the dime, and the half dime, and then you will be the envy of all of your numismatic friends. But in the meantime, we can start with the standard US dollar. This is J1120 Proof 63 Cameo, and I will be very sad when someone buys this coin because it is super cool. So don't buy it. You're not allowed to buy it anytime soon. Let me enjoy it. Keep it on the Rarity 7 website for a little bit, and then you can come and buy this coin. I'm just kidding. If you really want to buy this coin, I'm not going to mind that much. So that's it. That's the last coin on rarity7.com. If you are not on our mailing list, please sign up at the bottom of the website and join the mailing list so you'll be notified the instant the coins go for sale and these videos go up. Owen, thank you for joining me on this really fun numismatic adventure. We will do more soon.
My pleasure. No, I had a blast looking at these coins with you. I'm really proud of this group. I think we were able to put some awesome coins together. And to the viewers, keep an eye out on your email still. We're looking forward to making a lot more videos like this with even more great coins.